Hi everyone and welcome to this video where we're going to examine the theme of kingship in Shakespeare's Macbeth. Obviously, it's really important to know the text, the plot and the characters for any study of Macbeth, but it's equally important to be able to identify and trace an exploration of a theme throughout the play. In this video, I'm going to give you some good ideas that you could use if you were writing an essay that focuses or discusses the theme of kingship in the play. It may not seem like a very important theme to modern audiences, certainly not as important as ambition or good versus evil, but for Shakespeare's original audiences, this idea of what makes a good king would have been very important indeed. Those other themes are universal, human things. People today are still afflicted by good and evil and even over-ambition, but the importance of kings has waned. Nowadays, kings in much of the world at least hold very little power. It's mostly just ceremonial. They don't actually make any decisions that affect people's lives. But in Shakespeare's day, the king was the root of everything. According to the divine right of kings, a system of thought that existed throughout Europe at that time, kings were chosen by God, and as such, they weren't accountable to any earthly system, like the will of the people or parliament. They were as good as gods. In fact, King James I, the king on the throne when Shakespeare wrote Macbeth, believed that kings were gods, and he used scripture to defend his position. Obviously then, with a king who thought that way, Shakespeare had to make sure that his play didn't offend him, and we see his exploration of kingship almost as an instruction manual on how to be a good king. Duncan is presented at the beginning of the play as an excellent king. He rewards the bravery of Banquo and Macbeth with fine words, golden opinions, and in Macbeth's case, a new title. It's important to remember, however, that although Macbeth says that Duncan is the perfect king, he hath been so clear in his great office, that his virtues would plead like angels trumpet-tongued at the deep damnation of his taking off or his killing. Duncan actually makes several errors. The first is obviously to trust the original Thane of Cawdor, and the second is to give that title to Macbeth and not suspect him. Perhaps Shakespeare is showing here that to be a good king, you also need to be a little more wary and suspicious, a little more ruthless. For example, we see that Malcolm, when Macduff comes to him in Act 4 to get him to return to Scotland, doesn't trust him immediately and instead tests him to work out his intentions. He appears to have learned from his father's mistakes. There's also the fact that there is a rebellion in the first place and that the Norwegians felt that they could attack. All of this points to a kind and decent, if not terribly effective, king. Macbeth, however, proves to be a bad king. Over the course of his time as King of Scotland, the country descends into a tyrannical place filled with death knells, bloodshed and suspicion. He admits that he keeps spies in the houses of all the lords, and he is suspicious of everyone. After his second visit to the witches in Act 4, he promises that the firstlings of my heart shall be the firstlings of my hand. That he won't wait or consider things anymore, he's just going to act. This has terrible consequences for Macduff's family, and it's obviously a very bad trait in a ruler. Although we don't see Malcolm as king as the play ends with him going to be crowned, we get a sense of what he would be like from his exchange with Macduff in Act 4. His supposed flaws of lust, greed and desire for chaos are revealed to be the polar opposites of his real character. He has no interest in accumulating wealth. He is mild and peaceful, and he is as yet unknown to women. This is perhaps the best description of what a king should be. If we accept the doctrine of the time, the divine right of kings to rule because they are chosen by God, then it's best that they see it as Malcolm does, as some sort of sacred duty to rule justly and fairly, but not weakly and not to be overly trusting. We can see that Shakespeare in most of his works isn't trying to upset the status quo. He is in many ways a supporter of, or even an apologist for, royal power. His exploration of kingship in Macbeth is no different. It seems that his distinction between good and bad kings reflects favourably on Shakespeare's own king at the time when the play was performed, King James I. I hope that you have found this video useful in your study of Macbeth. Please subscribe to the channel, like and leave a comment, and keep an eye out for more videos that are coming soon on Macbeth and other areas of the Leaving Cert course.